Is it anti-Israel to criticize the IDF and the lack of the equipment in the army? Our case is that it absolutely is not anti-Israel to criticize the situation. People argue that there are so many enemies and that by criticizing any Jewish person or leader in Israel, we are creating division. I am not in favor of blindly criticizing people, nor am I in favor of creating havoc for no reason. I'm not in favor of calling them crazy, crazy names. It's just a matter of the safety of the soldiers has to be paramount, and there's no way that by publicly criticizing the lack of equipment, this is anti-Israel. It just doesn't work. And the safety of the soldiers has to be the number one priority. It's completely insane that soldiers have to ask for donations, that soldiers have to beg for donations, that they have to send out paybox links or send out WhatsApp messages to random people in America or in Australia or in Canada or in England asking them for donations. Under what circumstance is that normal? And why is that the accepted norm? It shouldn't be. And the suggestion that it would be anti-Israel or causing division is completely crazy. There are so many different iterations of this argument that have been made. I'll share one. At the beginning of the war, people said there's so many reservists and Israel's trying its best. Again, if you want to try your best and work at Starbucks, all due respect to everyone at Starbucks. It's not life and death. And I wish everyone at Starbucks well. Even the ones that wear crazy pins and hate Israel. That's very different than being in charge of procuring military equipment. If you're in charge of military equipment, or if you're in charge of the southern border, your priority is the safety of the soldiers and the safety of the people in the state of Israel. That carries a different set of responsibilities. It's also why your average barista at Starbucks does not have a personal driver, but heads of divisions in the Israeli army do. And they also carry huge pensions. Because if you're doing your job properly, you deserve to be compensated properly. And to call out inaction is the right thing to do in this case. There's no participation trophies for trying your best. Now, of course, Israel was not prepared for this many reservists, but the problem is so much deeper, it's so much wider, and it has to be dealt with. And if we can't openly speak about this issue, then there's no chance of fixing it. And the only way to deal with it is to fix it. Now, there were some people that argued, well, we can't let the enemies of the Jewish people know that there's a shortage of equipment. Well, I have news for you. They have cameras. They're on Facebook. They're on YouTube. They're on Instagram. They're watching. The IDF was posting pictures of soldiers in crazy equipment. So all they had to do was look at the IDF's own website and just take a look at any soldier on the street and see what kind of equipment they had. So it's a very disingenuous argument, and I don't think that was actually the case. I think that was a tool used to try to shut down dissent or discussion. And if we're being really honest about accounting on this problem, we need to just confront the fact that there's a shortage and that we deal with it and go forward. That shouldn't be so hard. For whatever reason, there's this attempt to stop speech when it comes to dealing with life and death issues in the state of Israel. And it's about time that stops. Because if we can't have an open and clear discussion about it, then there's no way to fix it. And then some people argued, well, go back channel and figure things out. And what happens in the back channels is that everyone tries to pass the buck. They say it's not actually their issue, it's someone else's issue, and that it's not really the responsibility of their specific office. I can't tell you the number of Knesset members, the number of people in the Ministry of Defense, the number of people in the IDF leadership that know about the equipment problem and will acknowledge it privately. And then they'll come and they'll say, I looked into it. So-and-so says they're working on it. Working on it for when? For what war? In 10 years? 15 years? There are basic problems and we have to deal with it. No soldier should have a helmet from the 1970s. No soldier should have a helmet from the 1980s. No soldier should have a helmet from the 1990s. No soldier should have a helmet from the 2000s. We're in 2025. There was one soldier who was not given a sufficient number of tools in his tank. And he left his tank to go to a Namer, an armored personnel carrier, from a separate accompanying unit. And he was hit by an RPG and killed. Now, if he'd had a couple $100s worth of tools, he would likely still be alive today. And when a colleague of mine heard this story, he turned to me and said, why would someone go into war without all of the proper tools? It's so simple to the average observer. Something is going on in which the chain of command and the breakdown is not being honest in the accounting of the situation. Because things that very basic military thinkers could very clearly see are a problem are being dismissed as, oh, Ain Brira, we don't have an alternative, or Ain Mala Sot, there's nothing to do. And this is a vicious, vicious cycle that needs to end. And that's why we are drawing attention to this issue. It's a big opportunity and a mitzvah and an amazing privilege to say that we've helped IDF soldiers on the front lines. Don't take that for granted. But at the end of the day, this is not the role of donors. This is the role of the state of Israel and the Ministry of Defense. And they are so good in so many other elements of war tactics, equipment, technology. For whatever reason, the basics have been lost. And on top of it, the conversation is stifled. So my hope is that we can create opportunities for real discussion and a real conversation about these issues so that we can collectively be better. It got to the point where even in the private conversations, some officials would say, what do you expect us to pay for all of the equipment for reservists and Sadir soldiers, even if they're medics and not combat soldiers? And the true answer in this war is no, because the global Jewish community and people that care about Israel were not asking Israel to pay for it. We were asking Israel to acknowledge the problem and to say, here, you guys can help in this place, in that place, in this place. And it's not a money issue. So when we take the money out of the problem, it's still a problem in acknowledgement and in taking the issue seriously. So these are some of the thoughts that I have right now about this issue, and I will continue to talk about it until we see major change, and hopefully that comes very shortly.